Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very happy Thursday to you all. And welcome to another episode of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. My name is Justin. Today is Thursday, September 18th of 2025. And on today's episode, we are primarily going to focus on NFL Week 3 and the upcoming PLE from the WWE called Wrestlepalooza. So I don't expect it going to be a huge episode, but nonetheless, I think, we want to get one out, give you our week 3 predictions, and get you guys ready for the upcoming weekend. There just isn't a whole lot right now to talk about when it comes to Major League Baseball. I think there's a lot of obviously there are a lot of series that have playoff implications, and we covered that pretty heavily back on Tuesday. I think, and I'm hopeful that when we get to next Tuesday, and we're just days away from the season ending, we can have a better picture about who's in the postseason and who's not. We already know that the Philadelphia Phillies and the Los Angeles Dodgers have clinched playoff spots. I'm expecting teams like the Atlanta Braves and the Milwaukee Brewers, possibly the Chicago Cubs, Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees, possibly by this time next week should have clinched. But yet again, if you guys are baseball fans, there are still playoff implication matches heading down possibly to the final series of the season, which will be next weekend. So as we do take a little side trip and a little break from Major League Baseball conversations here on this episode, I encourage you guys to check out the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs this weekend. That is a fun game, I think, that people should tune into, because the Cubs potentially hold the fate of the Cincinnati Reds in a 4-game series at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, Ohio. If Chicago goes in there and takes 3 or 4 or even split the series, then the Reds line up to be knocked out of the postseason. We currently are wrapping up Giants and Diamondback series. We're currently wrapping up a Padres and Mets series that have implications for wild card. The Dodgers and the Phillies are wrapping up a series that are trying to fight for the best record of Major League Baseball, nonetheless the best record of National League, to have home field advantage during the playoffs. So there are plenty of games to tune into. But we talk about the Reds and the Cubs. I mean, this is a do or die scenario. Yeah, the Reds have Pittsburgh afterwards. Then they go to Milwaukee, and I'm assuming Milwaukee would have clinched by then in the final series. They have a whole week of rest if they win the division. So is their strategy to continue playing business as usual, or do they rest starters that could give the Mets an opportunity? So it's a lot of what ifs, and I think we'll have a clearer image next week when we come to you on a Tuesday. As we sit here, I want to just kind of, before we get into our topics of the day, I want to go ahead and just cover the basis with our YouTube channel. As you guys have seen shorts and videos posted throughout the week, we've had baseball earlier this week, and that is going to continue on Saturday and Sunday. I have it right here. For baseball, on Saturday at 7:15, you can watch the Milwaukee Brewers and the St. Louis Cardinals face off. I believe it's game 2 of a 3-game series, and that begins on Saturday, and on Sunday At 7 p.m., we'll get a chance to watch the Seattle Mariners take on the Houston Astros. All these are currently wild card. I know Seattle and Houston are fighting for a division in our MLB The Show 25 franchise series, while Milwaukee and St. Louis is a solid rival game that I think people would enjoy watching. I think Milwaukee right now has fought themselves back into a potential wild card spot as well. So those are the two games I've selected. You guys can watch, check that out on our channel this weekend. We also have you coming your way with Thursday Night Football tonight between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. We have two games coming to you on Sunday as the 1 o'clock matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Minnesota Vikings, followed by Sunday Night Football with the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants. To wrap things off in week 3 on our NFL Madden 26 franchise series, where we play as the Cincinnati Bengals, we have the Detroit Lions taking on the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football at 8:15 as well. So that is our football schedule. We should just had NXT last night. They are getting ready for NXT Spring Break-In coming up to you this Sunday, so we can anticipate that, as well as SmackDown and Main Event. We continue the King of the Ring tournament, round 1, 4 matches, 2 females, 2 males matches coming your way come Friday, and then Main Event on Saturday. So then we'll begin round 2 next Monday, and we will go from there. So that's pretty much it on our show, on our channel right now. Like I said, if you guys haven't gotten a chance to, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave comments down below. I'm always looking to grow the channel as much as possible. As baseball season begins to wind down, it would open up some content for me to produce. I don't know what the directions we're going to take next year, but those are always good conversations to have. Let's get right down into it. There's not going to be a whole lot of Wrestlepalooza conversations, but I did want to bring it up because this is a very important time in the WWE. They just came off of a big announcement last week where WrestleMania 43 in 2027 is going to be held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Part of that tour that they do each and every year. It's been an 8-year deal that the WWE has had with them. I know back on Tuesday, I gave some mixed emotions about that. I have to agree with a former WWE and Hall of Famer, Bubba Ray Dudley, earlier this week on Busted Open podcast. Check them out. He kind of gave his thoughts on it, and I think he's completely correct. As a business perspective, we've always, we try to look at this in different angles. But if you're someone like Nick Khan or like Tony Khan, and you're someone like, if it's AEW, Ring of Honor, any independent wrestling promotion, I feel that, I honestly agree that WrestleMania weekend in Riyadh 2027 opens up the window for another promotion to hold a big venue in hopes to attract and draw attention for their company in the U.S. And anyone who doesn't, I don't know, like I said, if it's, you figure if AEW opens up a stadium on that same weekend, fans will go. It would actually be a larger entity because WWE is not in town. So, plus, I honestly, truly would believe that it would also gain more viewerships than WWE at that WrestleMania. I strongly also believe that if someone does pull this off, WWE has practically shot themselves in the foot with this deal. And like I said, things are meant to be changed. We've seen that happen before. We could possibly see it happen again. I don't know. But the reality of it is that you would be dumbfounded and a bit stupid business move if you're an opposing company not to battle the WWE. This would be the perfect time to battle the WWE in ratings, especially at their biggest stage of them all. And if you could win, I think it would do huge for a company to gain over a victory that way. So that's a point I just wanted to make apparent on this program before we get into it. But Wrestlepalooza is a big deal this weekend because it marks the change of the way you watch professional wrestling, specifically in the WWE. Yes, you still have Raw on Netflix. You have SmackDown on USA Network, NXT on CW. But now you're getting our WWE PLEs moving forward in another subscription that is a little bit more expensive to purchase in ESPN Unlimited. And, this will be the change. We're going to see exactly who's willing to spend $29.99 a month to watch wrestling. And I don't think, I think what comes to a good, PLE obviously has to be its match card. There has to be a good match card in line that, hey, you know what? You're going to miss out a lot if you miss this. And, I'm kind of up in the air because I've been the one who really does enjoy, and I'll tune around every time WWE has a PLE, and I'll, make it apparent to tune into it. But at the same time, I used to grow up where I only used to watch WrestleMania and maybe SummerSlam out of all because it was $60-$70 a month. And I'm sure obviously inflation has, changed our economy, but it's kind of, if I don't know, maybe I don't think people just has $60-$70 a month to watch pay-per-views all the time. Especially, unless you had a DVR so you could record it, you weren't able to go back and rewatch it. You only had like a 24, 48-hour window after the event to watch it on that demand channel, and then you would have to wait for it to come out on DVD. So you'd end up spending about $100 on wrestling just for one pay-per-view. So I guess this is all going to be subjective to opinions. If you think, as a wrestling fan, the match card is good enough to buy and watch this, I'm sure maybe either you're going to get a big hit and then it dies away, or it's going to slowly grow and people are going to be more selective. To me, watching this subscription becomes, you get it for a month. You only get the pay-per-views in the month, and maybe if I don't want to watch a certain pay-per-view, I could die down. But WWE will have to start maintaining and have high match cards on PLEs. And more content, I think, is going to have to be provided other than PLEs for this deal. So you be the judge, but the match card that I see here on the WWE website, it's on the ESPN app. It starts at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 4 o'clock Pacific. It's on the ESPN app in the United States and Netflix everywhere else. There's a Wrestlepalooza countdown on Saturday, on September 20th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific, on the WWE.com, the ESPN app, WWE social platforms, including YouTube and TikTok, where they dive into the action. So the match card that we have here in place, I'm just going to read down the list. We have the undisputed WWE Championship match where Cody Rhodes takes on Drew McIntyre. We have a mixed gender tag team match where CM Punk and AJ Lee teams up to take on Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. John Cena takes on Brock Lesnar. Women's World Championship match as Io Sky will take on Stephanie Vaquer. and the Usos would take on Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. And, I've been kind of in and out, been watching a lot of football, been watching a lot of baseball, kind of lackluster since SummerSlam to watch plenty of wrestling. I am familiar with some of these feuds that has been happening. Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes. We have the CM Punk AJ Lee thing, which I think is dominating all WWE platforms. John Cena and Brock Lesnar as well. I've been seeing highlights and clips of the Usos and the little feud with LA Knight. And it almost seems to me that maybe they're going back to a feud where either the Usos turn heel or I don't know the direction they're going in. I'll tell you this: John Cena and Brock Lesnar. First thing I'll talk about here. You respark an old rivalry. One of the toughest opponents John Cena's ever had to face. I don't know, and I don't care if this is part of John Cena's retirement tour, if this was intentional or not. It's good for business. I like it. I think it draws money. I think it draws attention. I think you also kind of show Brock Lesnar's always been this image. He could step away and it still is the same image. He's just this big beast that comes in, he conquers, and he leaves. And John Cena is looking to conquer that. And does he have what it takes in his final days on the WWE? Because it's limited, right? Does he have what it takes to overcome the beast incarnate? And, I think John Cena gave a lot to Brock, 10 years ago when they competed inside that ring. And I think it's time for the tables to be turned as we can see John Cena beat Brock Lesnar. We've seen this in recent years where Brock has given back to the company. And I think that's a good Brock. I like that Brock Lesnar. So I'm excited to see this match happen. We're counting down the days till John Cena retires for good. And we get a treat. And, this is, when you want to talk about a Wrestlepalooza, it's important to have a good match card. This is a good match for the match card. I will jump the conversation here over to Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre, as I feel like that's going to be a really good match, especially when you make things and get things personal. You take Cody Rhodes out indefinitely. So I'm going to be in. That's a match on my card I'll be watching. But I think, obviously, the conversation is CM Punk, AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. Obviously, this feud's been going on for months. The return of AJ Lee was phenomenal. I don't believe you would have been able to have it at a different place. Different place, different time, different result. And, it's been over, 10 years, long overdue since we last saw AJ Lee in the ring. So I'm excited to see AJ Lee back in the ring. You have husband and wife go at it. I really don't care who wins. But just to see her in the performance, AJ Lee doesn't look like she is out of shape. Looks like she's still the young AJ Lee like she was 10 years ago, which I think is incredible. So, like I said, not a big take on it, but that is my take nonetheless of Wrestlepalooza. I want to go ahead and jump just directly into my week 3 predictions. As you guys heard back on Tuesday, I'll reiterate. I was 13 for 16 on week 1. I was 12 for 16 in week 2 in predictions. So not too shabby. I'm going to focus this week on those teams that are 2-0. Specifically for the reason being that I think there's going to be a clear image after this. It's one thing to start the season 2-0, but you separate yourself as a team who is serious about, being talented, being good, having the right players and the right coaching staff. And if you're serious, then 3-0 comes easy to you. For those who are maybe 2-0 that will lose this week, or that have potential of losing, it's about showing your true colors. It's about, great, you got off to a good start, but now can you maintain that start? Going 3-0 kind of images, hey, this isn't just a joke. This isn't just a skip in the jump. You didn't just get lucky within the first 2 games. This is you actually able to have an organization and a team to play solid football. Gosh. So when I talk about that, I'm not worried about the Packers, about the Eagles in this case. I'm not worried about the Bills because I strongly believe that they are legit teams. I'm talking about the teams like the Bengals, right? They have, we've talked all preseason long how crappy their defense is, that they're going to rely a lot on their offense. And that's very true. But now, since Jake Browning is going to substitute Joe Burrow for the next 12 weeks, what does that offense really look like? How much of a downgrade did we just go? What's good about this is that we already know what Jake Browning is capable of bringing to the table. What we don't know is it good enough to keep the Bengals alive for the next 12 weeks? Remind you, throughout that schedule, you have a tough schedule. You have a tough couple games coming up in Detroit and Green Bay. If you could outlast that, then you got to deal with Buffalo and Baltimore around Thanksgiving. Joe Burrow is not expected to come back until after that. And it really would all depend on where he's at, where the Bengals are at record-wise. Now, great, 2-0 gives you that advantage. But the real question is now you're going up against a team like Minnesota. They're 1-1, that's given, right? But they're also not a team to sleep on. As a matter of fact, the NFC North is one of the toughest divisions in the entire league. So when you look at this matchup, I think, don't let the records fool you. It's at US Bank Stadium in Minnesota. And I think the true test for the Bengals will be shown here. Are they a team to be taken seriously in the AFC North that's competitive and willing to battle every ounce? Which I don't want to downgrade them. They're willing to battle. But are they as good as the 2-0 says they are? Another team is the Los Angeles Rams. They're going up against the Eagles. That's going to be a tough matchup. We also have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the show, and I think that they're a strong team. But what about the Colts? Was really going with Daniel Jones the right selection, moving past Anthony Richardson? And so those are the tests. And what about the Arizona Cardinals? Surprisingly, they're going up against San Francisco. One of those teams is going to end up 2-1, I believe, this Sunday. So the question is going to be, which team? Because is Arizona, how serious can you take Arizona? Because if you would have asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have told you that Arizona probably would have been flat bottom of this division. I think it's also important to take a look at the teams 0-2, right? Because we do want to focus in on teams like the Saints, like the Kansas City Chiefs and the Giants, right? Right now, I'm not hitting that panic button for the Chiefs. Yes, they're 2 games back of their division. Yes, the Chargers are 2 games above, and the Broncos and the Raiders are 1-1. That's given. But I'm not hitting the panic button yet because we've seen the Chiefs before get off to a slow, rough start. I'm hearing this around that, the dynasty's done with, the Chiefs don't have an offense, and sure. But I can't, based off of their past in the recent years, I can't play against them throughout the course of the year because they're able to turn it on and off when it counts the most. And so, and I'm not making excuses for Kansas City, but when you go out to Brazil, play an international game, barely you get away with, a loss, which you probably, crappy performance given that. Then you come back and you have to take on the Super Bowl defending champions. I'm like, okay. Right. So you play Sunday Night Football against the Giants. I'm expecting things to kind of a little pep in their step and to get back on that winning track. Miami Dolphins. I mean, where do they fit in the AFC East this year? Is going to depend tonight when they take on the Bills. Yeah, they're on the road. They're in Buffalo. But when you if you start your season off 0-3 compared to your top of division 3-0, it kind of throws things in a different manner. Other teams like the Browns and the Panthers that are 0-2, Texans a little surprising here, to be honest. The Jets, not so much. Tennessee, not so much. But I think so. If you're looking out for 2-0 teams, you're looking for whoever picks up and goes 3-0. Those are the serious teams. I think we'll get a real image look. Okay, things are now settled down. You've had your first win, your first loss, whatever. And now you're going to settle down in week 3 and start, hey, let's establish the next 4 to 6 weeks at a time. And then those teams that are 0-2. Either you have teams that you aren't worried about, like the Chiefs, that have the potential of coming back, and it's not going to phase them at all. It's not going to affect them in the postseason outcome. Or you have a 2-0 team that you may even start asking yourself at 0-3, well, do you want that first round bye? So those are the things that I'm personally looking out for here in week 3. The separation of the good teams. You can kind of get in the clear idea in the next 2 weeks. Those teams that are serious, those teams that are going to kind of breeze into the postseason, that you kind of not really going to have to pay attention to, but they're going to be fun to watch compared to teams that are they're going to struggle. They may have it in, and the teams that just don't have it for the year whatsoever. With that being said, let's get right down to picking our teams. Before we do that, our division games that we talked about on Tuesday, the Bengals are in Minnesota. The Bengals are 2-0. Vikings are 1-1. We'll play J.J. McCarthy. And I'm honestly a little bit concerned. Like I said, I know what Jake Browning's capable of, but he came back from behind to win the game. But my bigger question is going to be, how much further can that defense take you? And I know we're starting early in the season asking those questions, but it is true because, look, we allowed the opponent to put up 27 points, right? The rule of the game is to put up more points to your defense, but we can't afford against decent teams, and I consider the Vikings decent, to put up 41 points or to 25 or more points, in my opinion. I don't want to go against. I'm kind of going against the Bengals this week in hopes that I'm proven wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I think that if they have the opportunity to beat the Vikings, they can. It looks good for their season, but I'm going to go against them in hopes to be wrong here in week 3. So I am going to select and choose the Minnesota Vikings to win this ball game and give the Bengals their first loss on the season. All right, what else do we have going on in our division? Looking here. I guess they're all on the other side, right? Can't find anything. All right, so the Packers take on the Browns, and I think this is a no-brainer to go with the Packers. They're 2-0 to the 0-2 Browns. I think that the Packers are probably the team. At the beginning of the year, I was saying the Eagles were the team in the NFC. Now I'm saying the Packers are they just seem flawless. They seem like they don't skip a beat. They're a smooth sailing ship, and they should almost ease right into the postseason. They're getting off to a fire start, just demolishing the teams. And I think this is another game that they could easily walk in and walk out, putting up probably even 50 points, if I would say the least. The question coming out of this would be Joe Flacco. I noticed they benched him at the end of last week because there was no point in putting him back out there. But how far do you go with Joe Flacco if there's no progress being made with this club? Yes, you want to ease into your new quarterbacks kind of making their way in, and I like the opportunity that they gave them last week. But maybe you see a little bit more, but at some point it becomes tarnishing on a career that I respect Joe Flacco for. But so we'll have to try to see how this week goes. It's at home. It's not going to look pretty. This one I'm going to be up in the air with. It's the Steelers taking on the Patriots. They're both 1-1 on the year. Steelers are on the road, but I'm going to go with the Steelers on this one. I'm not trying to say anything particular that the Steelers are, this 13-4 team, but I think that they have found a temporary solution that keeps them relevant in the league, in the division for the next at least year or so with Aaron Rodgers. I think you have the right defense that gives him opportunities, and the right offense to give him the options to throw to. Then we have the Monday Night Football game. It's going to be a good matchup, I believe. The Lions and the Ravens. I see the Ravens as the Packers of the AFC. They're kind of just well put together. They're a good squad. I think they're fan favorites to win. And I could see them beating these Lions. They're just really aggressive, very assertive. And I have the Baltimore Ravens winning Monday Night Football. I know that's crazy, right? So that is going to be the look into my league here. Games I'm currently going to be paying attention to. I'm throwing in Sunday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs. As I mentioned, I don't think the Chiefs are... I don't think you could be phased yet by the Chiefs and hit that panic button to start the season off 0-2. Yes, it's a slow start. Yes, I think there have been changes for this team. Especially, it's not a good sign when Patrick Mahomes is running. It has more rushing yards than your running back. But I think this is kind of, hey, you settled in, you got through a tough team, you got through an international game, you come back. Yeah, you're in New York, but I think you have a solid day. You come away with the victory, beat the Chiefs. And I think you give yourself that, hey, we're still there and we could get back on track after a victory. So I'm looking at Sunday Night Football. Not game of the week for me, but the 2-0 Cardinals and the 49ers, I'm also looking at. I think that, we're seeing that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers could kind of just do anything. Right? And so I think that the 49ers will walk away with this victory. It'll be a very close game, and I wouldn't even be surprised to see if the Cardinals could win. Like I said, we're talking about a 3-0 start. We're talking about who's a real competitor in this league. And I think if the Cardinals or the 49ers win, I think they show everyone. Remember, beginning of the year, I had the Cardinals dead last. I had the 49ers kind of in third, and I even had Seattle up above. So to see these two out early start, I think it gives whoever wins the upper advantage, because I feel like the Eagles are going to beat the Rams on Sunday, and I go with they're going to have that leverage in that NFC West to take that division and hopefully win. I'm not, I don't want to predict it too soon, but I really do think that maybe one of the winners out of this game will either win the division or go to the wild card. All right, let's just run down through the schedule for everyone else. Thursday night game, we have the Bills 2-0 taking on the Dolphins. I don't go against the Bills at home. I just don't. Especially with what they did in week 1 with the Ravens. Falcons in Carolina. Surprising. I'm actually going to think that Carolina could pick up their first win of the season by beating the Falcons. I don't think it's going to do much for them, but I think that they do pick up a win in the division here. We got the Packers over the Browns. An 0-2 Houston Texans in Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville will love nothing more to come back. They were very aggressive, very pounding last week. I want to see that momentum carry into week 3. So I'm choosing the Jaguars to win that game. I like I said, I went against the odds here. I'm hoping the Bengals win, but I'm choosing the Vikings because I really don't know. I'll get a better clearance to see what Jake Browning can do, but we know what J.J. McCarthy could do. Um, so, like I said, I hope the Bengals win, but I'm choosing the Vikings. Then we have the Steelers beating the Patriots, the Eagles beating the Rams. We have the 0-2 Jets taking on the 2-0 Buccaneers, and I got the Buccaneers in that one. They go 3-0 to start the season. We have the Colts that are 2-0 and the Titans that are 0-2. I'm going to go safe on this one with the Colts to win. Although, being in Tennessee, I don't see Tennessee going to be anywhere near the playoffs this year, but I do see them picking up a couple division wins, and this could be one of them. The Raiders and the Commanders, gosh. Pete Carroll, that was a fun game back on Monday between the Chargers and the Raiders. I got the Commanders, though. I think Jaden Daniels a little bit better at home. I'll have them pick up the win over the Raiders Sunday. Broncos and the Chargers. What's interesting about this game is that the Chargers have now started the season off facing each and every one of the division. If they can hit the trifecta, they're back at home. First home game of the year. Having that momentum, I think, catapults them to go 3-0. As much as I like Sean Payton, Bo Nix, the Denver Broncos 1-1, I just, you've already beaten the Chiefs, you already beaten the Raiders. It's time to beat the Broncos. You had that 3-0 start in the division. I think it really puts the Chargers in a good place. This is one of the surprise teams where I think if they could beat the Broncos this week, like they probably almost have that division, in my opinion, locked up. I see the Seahawks putting up a victory this week against the Saints, as the Saints are 0-2. I got the Cowboys beating the Bears this week, as the Bears are 0-2. We also obviously have the 49ers beating the Cardinals, Kansas City beating the Giants, and the Ravens beating the Lions. So like I mentioned, let's recap real quick. We're looking for, yes, we have our division games, and that's very important. We're going to get our first true look from start to finish with Jake Browning and a 0-0 score. He was capable of making a comeback from being down. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Give us a win. But can he roll that over into a new team that's a little bit better than the Jaguars and in a little bit tougher division? And like I said, it's about putting up more points than your defense allows. So my question is going to be, I'm watching how well is Jake Browning. Like I said, I'm going against the odds, but I want the Bengals to win. It's key value, especially if you think, now we could, scenario purposes, we pick up a win, we stay ahead of the Ravens, right? And then we could go to Denver next week, and I feel like this is where that first stretch of the tough games are at. But remain hopeful. The season's young. I got the Ravens winning. Like I said, I like their scenario. I feel like the Lions, they held into those Packers game back in week 1, but I go back to that game because that was a tough game. That was one of the tougher games I think the Lions have all year long. And the Lions kind of made it close, interesting, but it was the Packers able to, just kind of walk away with that one. And if the Ravens can play anything like the Packers did in week 1, I feel like they'll walk away too with the victory. So that's going to be the Lions' challenge this season. It's going to be home games. But pay attention to 0-2 teams. The separation is coming. Pay attention to the 0-2 teams because it will tell you a lot about where teams are at early on in this year. And it can kind of help you just kind of start getting a hint of who's going to take the division, who's going to take the league by storm, and who's really going to be looking back, hey, we're going to reset. Because the deadline's coming up in a few weeks also. By that point, I think you could have a clear image about maybe a third of the teams are already out of the postseason. So that is all I have for you guys in today's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Have those notifications on. We will come back next week. We will recap all the sports. Hopefully, the Reds are still in the postseason. If not, they captured a wild card spot, for maybe a glimpse moment. But my main goal still for the Reds is that they finish the season off 500. They beat the Cardinals yesterday. They took the series from the Cardinals, which, relief there. But they just got back to 500, 76. They got to finish off strong. I want them to finish at least 82-80 on the year. I think it's well-deserved, well-needed. Also, we'll talk about Wrestlepalooza, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, mixed gender tag team match, and then obviously the Bengals, how do they perform? So that is all the time I have for you this afternoon. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit like, share, and subscribe button. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. And until next week, you guys take care. Thank you guys for tuning in.